Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing in brief about the embryological development of heart. So heart starts as just two endothelial heart tubes at about 18 days after fertilization. Now these two endothelial heart tubes will fuse and form a single tube. And this tube has a series of dilatations and constrictions. From cranially to caudally, we have the truncus arteriosus, then we have the bulbus cordis, then the primitive ventricle, the primitive atrium, and the two horns, the right and left horns of the sinus venosus. Now it's important to note here that what these structures will finally end up as in the adult heart. So the truncus arteriosus, as the name suggests, will end up as the pulmonary artery and the aorta. The bulbus cordis will form the smooth portions of the ventricles, which are the outflow tracts that lead just to the pulmonary artery or the aorta. Then the primitive ventricle will form the trabeculated portion of the ventricles. The primitive atrium will form the trabeculated portion of the atria. Then the left horn of the sinus venosus will form the coronary sinus, and the right horn will be absorbed into the right atrium. This picture shows the trabeculated and the smooth portions of the heart. Now, as we saw initially, the heart is in the form of a tube, but we know that this is not the final arrangement of the heart in the adult. The heart tube folds upon itself, as you can see in the diagram. There are some really nice animations that you can find on YouTube for this process. There's one more phenomenon that I would like to share with you. It is called as cardiac looping. So this process essentially establishes the left to right orientation in the heart development. And this process requires dynein protein and cilia. This explains why we see dextrocardia, that is, the heart is to the right side, in case of Cartagenous syndrome where there is a dynein protein defect. As the heart is being folded, walls are being created inside it. We will see each one of them in detail now. Now the proximal portion of the bulbus cordis and the primitive ventricle fuse and they form a single cavity. From the base of this cavity, that is the primitive ventricle, starts arising a muscular septum, which you can see here. It is going upwards. Note that the atria are now lying superiorly and not inferiorly as they were before. Then, from the portion of the bulbus cordis arise two ridges, the right and left bulbar ridges. Their proliferation leads to the formation of something called as the bulbar septum, and it starts growing downwards towards the muscular septum. Now this proliferation leaves a gap in between. This gap is then filled by the proliferation from the endocardial cushions, which lie at the junction of the atria and the ventricles, or the atrioventricular canal. So the proliferation from the bulbar septum, from the endocardial cushions and the muscular septum together, they will form the interventricular septum. Now a word about the endocardial cushions. As I said that they are located at the atrioventricular canal and they contribute to the formation of the interventricular septum, the interatrial septum, as well as the heart valves. So logically, any defect in them can result in either an atrial septal defect, a ventricular septal defect, or a valvular defect. Now these together are called as atrioventricular canal defects or endocardial cushion defects, and these are classically seen with Down syndrome. Now about the spiral septum or the aorticopulmonary septum. This arises in the truncus arteriosus. It basically divides the truncus into the aorta and the pulmonary artery. It is formed as a result of migration of the neural crest cells to this area. So the failure of migration is going to result in something called as the persistent truncus arteriosus, which means that there will be a common outflow tract between the right as well as the left ventricle. And if this septum fails to spiral, that will lead to transposition of great vessels. The aorta will arise from the right side, whereas the pulmonary artery will arise from the left side. Now we will see the development of the atria. The opening between the sinus venosus and the primitive atrium starts to narrow and becomes almost slit-like. The two halves of this slit, or the two edges of it, are called as the venous valves. Cranially, these fuse and form something called as the septum spurium. And the sinus venosus is absorbed into the atrium by the enlargement of this sinoatrial orifice. Now we will see the development of the interatrial septum. From the roof of the primitive atrial cavity arises a septum called as the septum primum, and it grows downwards towards the atrioventricular cushions or the endocardial cushions. Now this gap is called as the foramen primum. As the septum grows downwards, a dehiscence arises in it, and it leads to a foramen called as the foramen secundum. Now, from the right side of the septum primum arises another septum called as the septum secundum. It too grows downwards, but it doesn't reach fully to the bottom. Instead, it overlaps a part of the septum primum. And this overlapping results in the formation of a valve-like mechanism. Now, as we know that the pressures in the right side of the heart are much higher in the fetal circulation. So what happens is that the septum primum essentially gets pushed, and it allows for the blood to flow from the right atrium to the left atrium, thus bypassing the pulmonary circulation. And this tract is called as the foramen ovale. Now after birth, the pressures in the left side rise dramatically, and this closes off this valve, and the failure of closure of this valve is called as patent foramen ovale. So this essentially summarizes in brief the embryological development of heart.